What's going on, guys? Young 46. We're going to do a talk through on Chambers Bay front 9. So my goal is to try to give you as much information as I can, kind of thought process, what I'm thinking, as well as some hole specific information. So let's see how it goes. So first things first, hitting an iron in here is so much easier than hitting a 3-wood. So we have to be really careful about where we land this thing, right? So we have to think about release. I think the greens are a little slower, like 11 or might be 10. I want to say 10 for this ready go. Normally what I try to do here is I need to really gauge where I land this thing. If I land it in the fairway, it's going to take a big hop and it's going to release through. So any chance of getting this tight, I need to know what's the distance to the very front of the green. You see it's about 230. 230 puts us right along that. Is it fairway? Is it green? Let's say 231. So that gives us about 7 yards. We could probably need to land at 6, right? 5 or 6 should be fine with the slower green speed. So basically, we're thinking about it from that perspective, then the hole is really only playing 233. So when I'm figuring in my distance, I'm only actually calculating it at 233. Anything left of the pin is probably going to roll off. Anything to the right, you run the risk of running down this ridge, but if we're going to miss here, we definitely want to miss to the right side. I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway that way. And the only other thing that's killing me is I'm only hitting this 95%, so getting it to stop is going to be difficult. And if I hit a huge hook like that, it's going to be even more difficult. Let's see where it lands. I think it would have been pretty good. I lost a ton of distance on that big hook. Alright, good news is this is fairly makeable. Now it is uphill, it's uphill 3 feet. So basically it's going to play like 15. So I'm going to hit this about 13.5 yards. Alright, we should get a nice little skip down the hill and then it hits and stops. Now when you're hitting a pitch, most people don't pay attention to the wind, but you have to. It's going to have a slight effect on it. So here it's going to push it to our left in this view. And we see the green goes left to right in this view. So I'm going to play it over here. That should actually make it land about right here. That makes sense. Like I said, this is very makeable. Bit a little too quick on me, but definitely had the line. Everything was played correctly, and certainly could have dropped there. All right, biggest thing I tell people about Chambers: first hole's tough. So if you par it, don't beat yourself up. Lots more holes. So this hole, you can go left to right. With a left to right wind, I'm not a big fan of going on this side, just because we have to contend with that bunker. Plus the left side gives you a shorter approach shot in, so I always go for the left if I can. Now if I get a big huge tailwind, then maybe I cut this corner a little bit, but I try to avoid it. Always try to go down the left. Certainly the easier drive. Now the approach makes it a little more difficult, but if you have high irons, it shouldn't be a problem. Good news is I have an okay distance in here. Probably playing like 111-ish. Say 111-ish. I think this might be a little left of the pin. Move it just a little bit. I think with backspin, we should be able to hit a full pitching wedge. It's going to be right of the pin, I think. It's on right on line, actually. It worked out well for the misting. And I'm just going to misting this a little bit. Good news is about Chambers, especially the front, you got 2 eagle potential holes on the 5, so we're still in okay shape. So here on this hole, depending on the green speed you're playing, you can take it long, like about right here, and there's this nice little ridge that'll bring it back. Conversely, there's a ridge right here. Anything there will go down into this collection area here. So if we want to miss, we want to miss over here, just because we do still have the chance for the ball to come back towards the pin. Now these slow green speeds, we're not going to get a whole lot of backspin, so I might just be a little more aggressive towards the pin. But I'm still playing it somewhat safe, right? Like I'm still playing right of the pin here. So it's a nice play. Putt's not too bad. A little right to left. Very makeable. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to ram this in, actually. Thought about playing it maybe at speed, but it's a little firmer than I maybe normally would there. Not too much further. If you figure fast, ramming on slower greens doesn't really look like a ram, but it is a ram. Okay, so this hole you can play it two ways. We've got this, you can see it right here really good. You can see this big ridge right here and how it kind of separates the fairway into an upper tier and a lower tier. So your lower tier dies out at 307, so it's risky. Into any type of tailwind or even a wind like this, it's a risky play because if you run through, you're done. So typically, I would play over here. We also have to think about the wind, right? So we have a left to right wind into a green. Won't let me go to it. Hold on. Into a green that slopes right to left in this view, left to right from the tee. We have to think about the approach. Obviously, this wind's not too bad, so we really don't have to factor it in too much. But if we're over here, we got to come in at an angle. Makes it a little more difficult, right, to use this ridge to funnel it back to the pin. Whereas here, we have a more straight-on shot to right here where we want to land it, and then bring it back. So I think either way you can do it. I'm going to go down the left, or the right side here, and I'm just going to be a little cautious. I don't think I can go through with this wind, but just in case, I'll dial back off the driver a little bit.
Good ball.
Yeah, could have hit full and been fine, but okay. Now the downside to being over here is your higher elevation. Probably going to be between 49 and 50 feet uphill. Yeah. So you're lower because you chose the lower tier, but you have a shorter shot into the hole as well. So I've got an okay number, kind of an in-betweener. So when I have an in-betweener, that means it's going to release more. I have to factor that in. Kind of stinks that it's slower greens, because if I get way up on this hill, there's a chance that it won't come back down. Whereas if I was on faster greens, it's most likely going to come. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it past the pin and hope it comes back. And on that line, it's not going to. That's the one that gets hung up. Because I didn't go left of the pin, that missed thing was pretty huge there. This is actually one of the funner pitch shots to hit, though, to be honest. It's about a grid of break, and it's downhill, so we're going to get a little bit of release on this. I'm only going to play it about 8 yards, and we should get some release, like I said, down the hill. If I ding, maybe it goes in, but that approach shot kind of set myself up for failure there. That little push. Ended up being a really tricky number, whereas if I would have hit a full driver, I would have had a great number in. I would have had a nice full 4-iron in. I certainly would have been set up nicely. I'm going to push this a little bit, or at least I was going to. The wind wasn't as strong left to right, so I should have just aimed it right down the center of the fairway.
That's a huge drive.
So kind of an in-between number. This hole, what we're looking for, we don't want to be right too much. We can be right, like right on here and be fine, but it gets a little tricky. Anything long back here gets a little tricky. Ideal place is left of the pin. You can be pin high left or short left. Your putt is very, very makeable. So you always want to think about that. Where am I going to miss, right? So when I hit a shot, because I don't have legendary ding capabilities, I always have to think about, am I going to miss early or am I going to miss late? And when the meter is on its way down, I'm thinking that the whole time, like miss here, don't miss here, right? So here, like I said, it's a bit awkward with the number because we can play a 6-iron at about 94%, or we can play a 7-iron and just take a little bit, play like half spin. So really depends on the hole. Because we're uphill, I don't like playing the 6-iron at 95% or 94 because we're going to get more release, right? And we just said we don't want to be behind the pin. Plus we run the risk of coming up a little short into this bunker. We hit this ridge right here and it just stops. There's a lot of bad stuff that can happen there. So I'm going to go ahead and play a 7-iron about, I don't know, we'll say, calling this half back, I would say 65% back. Might be a little short, but we should get some release on it too. Not going to be a whole lot. We might see a yard of release. Got about a yard and a half, 2 yards out of that. Only problem is we put ourselves where we didn't want to be, which is on the right side. We bring a little bit more break, whereas if we were, over here on that same line, it would be probably like right here is all. Very easy putt from that side. I think I'm just gonna play this like it about right here. Get right there, about 36%. So I'm playing it kind of, not necessarily a ram, but I'm not playing it easy either. Kind of right in between. Now, if we'd have gone above the pin, we would have had a lot more break, but we did manage to stay at least pin high. So this hole, this is a great wind direction. So this works out well. If you have a little bit of a headwind, you can try going for this right side. Like basically, I'm always trying to think from my approach shot backwards. Okay, a lot of people just hit their tee shot, but they're not thinking about positionally in the fairway where they want to be. So that's something you kind of have to tweak your mindset for, is thinking, okay, if I put it here, what's my approach look like, and so on and so forth. So ideally, we want to be as far to the right side of the fairway as possible. We want to be far right. Fortunately, you guys can't see that. I'm going to switch cameras here. Hold on. There we go. So ideally, there's this little inlet right here. You can see it, kind of a cut. If I have like a nice headwind, I'll try to go right for this right in here. This sets me up with the nicest approach in my opinion. But because we have a little bit of a head, but it's not much, I don't want to run the risk of putting myself in the rough. I want to kind of aim for the edge of that. And then just move it left. Let the wind kind of move it left a little bit. We pulled it too, so ends up in the middle, not really where you want to be. Rather be right of center. Okay, so this shot, easier if I go this view. So it's got all kinds of bumps and ridges. It makes it hard to play a flat shot in or anything less than full back, unless you practice the shot. Because it's unknown variable of how much release I'm going to get. Now you can see there's a ridge that runs kind of, east to west right here. And tricky part is trying to land it over that ridge, kind of right here in this sweet spot. If I can be on this side of the pin, I'm going to have a very, very straight putt. Very little break. If I can be pin high, so pin high right is an extremely makeable putt. So if I'm going to judge my wind, I'm going to aim a little more to the right than maybe I normally would, right? Get it right, right? Now, the only problem with this shot is I have an awkward number in. So I have a 3-iron at like 95%. That makes it a little tough because it's going to release more because of the lower power. So we might end up going past the pin here, unfortunately. I just don't see another way around it. I could dial back off my 4-iron, but when you dial off of your spin, trajectory goes down. So that's a problem as well. So I pulled it a little bit, but I did give myself room to do that. Only problem is I'm going to get that big bounce that we talked about. So I would have much rather been over here with that. Now we bring ourselves a nasty little left to right putt. It's not the easiest putt in the world to make here. My initial thought's right there. Because it's going to break a decent amount. But I also have to hit this 15 feet too. That's going to take some of the bite out of this break. So I think it might be a little less than that actually. I think I'm overplaying it. Kind of like it right there. Little too much. Just a bit too much. Well, gotta make that. But I didn't set myself up. So if you have a little bit of a headwind, you can clear this side right here. You can see it's like 299 to clear it. Uphill a little bit. So it's a little dicey. It's going to be somewhat close. And if you're not sure, just go for over here. This is what I'm going to do. But if I had a tailwind, I would definitely go, you know, way over here to the right. I'd try to go close to this bunker, but just off to the side a little bit.
Good ball.
This is a tricky shot. Definitely a tricky shot. So on this hole, we've got to watch release. The sweet spot here is to land it. Right here's the green, here's the fairway. I'm going to land it about 3-4 feet onto the green, and then it kind of deadens the hop and it just kind of releases right in here. Typically, what most people do is they go pin high, and then it releases way back here. There's a little slope, and it comes back to about right here. Now, one of the things I have done in the past, I've hit way over here, and this is more on faster greens. You can't do it on slower greens, but I hit it way over here. There's another ridge back here, and then it'll go all the way back to the hole. And I've had it come all the way to about 6 or 7 feet. But with this, with wind direction and green speed, we just have to be very aggressive and go right at it. I don't have a terrible number in here. Don't have a terrible number. That pool is not going to help. But we still might get the soft bounce.
Very nice.
See how I landed a pin high? Can't land a pin high. Carried that a little too far. Took a little bit too much backspin off that. Thinking about right there. Should be in.
Great roll.
Okay, now fingers crossed we get a little tailwind here on 8. All right, that'll work. Okay, so again, we're trying to set ourselves up from the approach, right? We're thinking about our approach and then we're working it back towards the tee. So we've got a little right to left wind, which is good. If we had a left to right wind, we want to be as far down the right side of the fairway as we can. But with this wind, we can pretty much hit it wherever we want. So now we're trying to figure out where our bounces are, right? So you can see we get this ridge right here. And we want to try to kick it off of it. You can see the steepest part of the ridge is right here. That's kind of where I want to focus my tee shot. This is going to kick it forward further. But you can also come down here and it'll go down that way. Right? Everything slopes left to right from this view. Left to right slope. I'm going to go about right there. About 25% backspin. I want it to kick hard off the backside of this hill, hopefully. Kind of catapult it forward.
Good ball.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of the backside of the hill, but I didn't catch it all.
That's a huge drive.
All right, so there's a few different ways you can play this. You can put backspin on it, which is fine. And depending on your green speed, you want to be left to the pin, run it up this hill, and then get it to come back. But you have to be careful of, if you land it too deep on the green, especially if you're talking about topspin, you're going to go too high on the hill. I've seen some people get stuck up in here, which is a nightmare shot. Or you go too high up on the hill, and you end up coming all the way back to here and come off the green. So you got to think about, you know, how far you're going to go. I'm aiming left of the pin, even though it's a right to left wind. I'm still aiming left of the pin a little bit, because if I ding it, it's fine, and if I push it a little bit, we should still be fine. I'm going to go full top. Full top, about 90, 98%. Ended up dinging it through the power of the 3-wood, though. It kicked us on a bad line. You gotta get past the pin. Okay, so it's not gonna come back. I didn't get it high enough on the hill to come back, which is a bummer. Faster greens, I think we're fine. I think it ends up coming back, but fortunately it didn't quite get the job done there. So full power probably would have been good. I think full power goes all the way up here somewhat, and then it ends up coming back. So that's a little unfortunate. I think you can putt it and get away with it, or you can pitch it. I think it's whatever you're comfortable with. If you're more comfortable with the putt, hit the putter. If you're more comfortable with the pitch, hit the pitch. Me personally, I like the putter here. I feel like the putter gives me the best chance to make it. But that's not to say I don't like the pitch too. I think they're both fairly equal in my book. I'm going to be fairly aggressive here trying to hole out. Didn't quite break as much as I thought. Well, I guess it did break. I hit it through it. Some of that's with the fringe. Sometimes, you know, you add for the fringe and then a lot of times it doesn't actually do anything. They end up going long. But that situation, I think I just played a little too much break. I played a little too much. Pretty straightforward here. We'll talk about this a little bit. Obviously, we want to avoid the bunkers. And you've got a ridge right here that if you go long, so if we go long over here, it'll bring it back a little bit. Again, it really depends on the green speed. Because this is 10, we can't really count on it bringing it all the way back. It'll probably only spin back, you know, 4 or 5 feet. Plus, with this wind direction, not really what we want to do. With left to right, I've landed it up here on champ 14 as far as all the way over here and had it come back. If we're talking about a left to right, right to left, that's not really what we want to do. I like it about right there. And then I could hit a 6, I could hit a 5. I'm actually going to deaden it a little bit with a 5. But I think either way is fine. Didn't quite play enough wind. But distance was really good. This is a pretty easy putt. So I think that's about 31% probably. Right here, about 31%. Maybe about right there. Go 32 just to be safe.
Solid putt.
Not a great round, not a bad round. Obviously hitting that big pool on the first hole was kind of bad. And then we had the par on 6. 6 is a tough hole. You know, if we're gonna par, we parred 2 tough holes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the talk through. I know I wasn't able to execute on a lot of what I was talking about, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't yet, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button.